This video is brought to you by Mutclord, an exporter of Chinese whetstones. More on them at the end of the video. This is Chinese salt and pepper seasoning. It's a Cantonese classic, used to sprinkle over crispy deep-fried stuff like squid, tofu, ribs, and popular pretty much everywhere from high-end Cantonese restaurants to takeout joints in the West. It's one of those simple, good things. So today, we want to teach you how to make that mix, while also trying to arrive at a formula of sorts so that you can give the Chinese salt and pepper treatment to whatever you want to salt and pepper. But, as always when you try to generalize stuff, there is also kind of a hitch. See, while this is Chinese salt and pepper seasoning, this is also Chinese salt and pepper seasoning. And if you went pretty much anywhere in China outside of Guangdong, it'll be this mix that you see in Chinese salt and pepper dishes. This ambiguity has led to more than a few confused people online, so let me explain real quick. You see, salt and pepper is a direct translation of the Chinese jiaoyan, but that character jiao can mean a few different things. Originally, it referred to huajiao, Sichuan peppercorn, the use of which, throughout China I might add, dates thousands of years all the way back to the spring and autumn period. So when peppercorns were introduced into China through the Silk Road trade routes, they ended up being labeled hujiao, or the Sichuan peppercorns of the steppe barbarians. And of course, a bit later, when chilies were introduced, they also ended up getting thrown in that same jiao bucket as well. So in most of the country, salt and pepper seasoning is actually a salt and Sichuan pepper seasoning. And it's in Guangdong that you primarily see the internationally famed salt and white pepper combination. Either way, both are perfectly delicious options, and both pretty straightforward to whip up. So, for the Sichuan peppercorn sort, first toast about a half tablespoon of whole Sichuan peppercorns in a dry pan over a medium-low flame for about 3 minutes. You'll know they're done once their color's deepened and the exterior has a slight oily sheen. Then transfer those over to a mortar, give them a good pound, and pass it all through a fine mesh strainer to get your final powder. Then, back to the pan, go in with another half teaspoon or so of salt and start toasting that as well. I know that toasting salt might seem like it's a superfluous step, and in a dry climate you might not need to, but salt can sometimes take on a bit of moisture. Like this bag right here was kind of on the clumpy side, and toasting it for about 3 minutes will get that excess moisture right out. So then just pound that up too, and set it aside. So then, our final mix today is going to be then 1 teaspoon of our toasted Sichuan peppercorn powder, a half teaspoon of the toasted salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of MSG. Mix well, and just like that, you've got yourself some jiaoyan seasoning. Then the Cantonese sort is basically the same idea. Half tablespoon whole peppercorns, toasted for about 3 minutes till fragrant, then pound into a powder and sifted. Final proportion is also the same. 1 teaspoon toasted and pounded pepper powder, half teaspoon toasted and pounded salt, a 1/4 teaspoon MSG, and after another quick mix, this is good to go as well. Of course, that said, what makes a Chinese salt and pepper dish usually isn't just going to be its seasoning. Generally speaking, these are all dry stir-fries of crispy deep-fried foods, and while there's a bunch of variations on the theme, you'll typically see something much like this. First, you'll want to prep your ingredient for deep frying. For something like our ribs today, this would be an alkaline soak, and for something like mushrooms or squid, it'd be a quick blanch, etc., etc. Then, no matter what you're making, you'll need to get your ingredient really dry, and give it a light marinade to give things a sort of base flavor. Then, you'll coat it with starch. Today, we'll be using a 1-to-1 mix of rice flour and cornstarch, followed by the obvious deep fry. Then you'll finish things up by mixing your ingredient in with the seasoning, optionally with a bit of aromatics as well. So, some mushrooms up first. To start things off, just get a pot of water up to a boil and dump your mushrooms in. These were 500 grams of oyster mushrooms, but you could use any flatter mushroom you wanted, or even cut something down to a similar size. Then, after about 3 minutes of blanching, take those guys out and let them chill down. Once they're cool to the touch, do a real bang-up job squeezing out the excess liquid from the mushrooms, and toss those into a bowl. Then just mix it with a 1/4 teaspoon salt, a half teaspoon sugar, and a half teaspoon soy sauce, and let that marinate until you're ready to fry. Then, immediately before frying, give those a coat with your cornstarch rice flour mixture, about 3 tablespoons each, and you can also swap that mix to be all cornstarch if you need it. Then, in a wok, get about a liter of oil up to roughly 180 centigrade, or until bubbles are rapidly forming around a pair of chopsticks, and drop in your mushrooms one by one. We're trying to fry out the moisture that's inside, so this will take a bit of time, about 7 minutes or so. You know they're done once they can feel obviously hard if you pulled a pair of chopsticks through them. Then just toss those onto a paper towel-lined plate and let those drain. Now, to finish the dish, pour out the oil and give the wok a quick rub with a paper towel. Over a medium-low flame then, toss in your fried mushrooms together with your Sichuan peppercorn seasoning from before. Combine in the wok, heat off, and your julienne mushrooms are done. So next up, ribs, which are also pretty much the same idea. To tenderize the ribs at first soak about 1 kilo's worth cut in 2-inch pieces, together with a teaspoon of sodium carbonate, and Kansui lye water would also work just as well. An hour later, drain and leave that bowl running under the smallest trickle of water for about 5-10 minutes, jostling it every so often to help flush out the myoglobin. Then, same deal, get your ribs really dry, and then marinate with a half tablespoon each salt, soy sauce, and liaojiu aka Shaoxing wine, and leave that to marinate for at least a half an hour. Then, right before frying, mix that with the same mix of rice flour and cornstarch, and dump that into the same liter of oil, though you might need to work yours in 2 batches. We're going to be frying this at a lower temperature than the mushrooms, about 145 centigrade for about 5 minutes or so, or until a chopstick can poke right through. Then remove, get the oil up to about 195, and finish with a quick 30-second fry to crisp things up. Then just pour out your oil, give the wok a quick rub, same medium-low flame, but this time we'll also be adding in about a clove's worth of minced garlic. And once that's fragrant, about 30 seconds, going in with the ribs. Quick mix, in with the julienne seasoning, another good mix, then optionally go in with about a half chili's worth each red and green mild chilies for the sake of good looking. Final mix, and out. Julienne ribs, done.
So, Mutclord Whetstones. This is a set of knife sharpening tools that I've really been enjoying using, and it's actually the only set that I pack with us when moving to Thailand. This is a 400-1200 diamond plate that's great for rough sharpening, and it worked perfectly fixing a couple chips on our cleavers. While this is a 5000 grit natural stone that comes in this jade color. When working with some other whetstones, I often find them to be a little bit too soft for Chinese cleavers, while this one has the hardness and ability to handle the thicker and harder Chinese cleavers and worked perfectly in our kitchen. So anyway, if you are looking for something to sharpen your Chinese style cleavers, maybe check out the link in our description box and enjoy a 15% discount. So we have 2 jiaos in our 2 jiaoyan, but each of this jiaoyan can have more variation and can get more complicated as you look around. The Cantonese one, the one with white pepper, it's often mixed with sand ginger, shajiang powder, and the huajiao Sichuan peppercorn one, it's often mixed with some other spices like star anise, etc. And my personal favorite variation on the huajiao one, it's adding toasted white sesame seeds. Adds crunch and flavor. So check out the recipe in the description box. A big thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon, and of course, don't forget to subscribe for more Chinese cooking videos.